So I'm going to try and tell this story without getting distracted. This one has a story. I'm going down a rabbit trail. So my father was an only child and I was an only child, and that fact alone led some people to believe that I was spoiled. I guess it kind of was for a little bit. From about the end of second grade to the beginning of fifth grade, it was just me and my parents. But the rest of my growing up years, there were always other people living in our house, because if someone didn't have a place to stay, my parents let them stay with us. Sometimes for weeks, sometimes for years, at one point for decades. Sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're family. At one point, just some people that were hitchhiking. When I was in high school, this ended up being an uncle and aunt and my mother's mother, my grandmother on that side, not my father's mother, the grandmother whose house I'm living in that I call Mama, not her. My mother's mother didn't like my dad, and when I was around 2 or 3, maybe as old as 4, but I don't think so, my parents were going through a divorce. They never actually finalized. And their story behind that is that at one point they were fighting and asked me as a little kid to choose who I wanted to live with. And I grabbed them both by the ear, knocked their heads together, and said, "Both of you." And the joke is that knocked some sense into them, and they ended up not getting divorced. But my grandmother, who didn't like my father, decided it was my fault that he didn't go away. And so after that, it was just tense. I couldn't put a finger on anything specific. It was just, she was very grandmotherly and loving with all my cousins and me. It was, I just, it wasn't that way. Although talking with some of my cousins, she wasn't always, anyway, that was her personality. So, when she moved in with us, my parents, to make it work, gave everybody like an area of the house that they were in charge of. And originally my area was going to be the kitchen, and my grandmother was going to be in charge of like the bathroom and hallway area that we shared. And my grandmother, being my mother's mother, decided she didn't like that. And so she said, well, she didn't even say it. She just decided she was taking over the kitchen, and that was it. And because she was my mother's mother, nobody argued with her because she's the mother. But it quickly became apparent that because she wanted to be in charge of the kitchen, I was not allowed in there. And it wasn't just I wasn't allowed in there to clean or move stuff around or even grab a snack. I just was not allowed in there. And I don't know how this came across to my parents. My mom was working constantly. I sometimes saw her on the weekend, but basically she was either at work or in bed. And in the beginning, my father, who was disabled, was locked away in his bedroom, and then later he was too disabled to do anything. So, because I couldn't go in the kitchen, I couldn't eat at home. And my parents had given me a little bit of money. My dad at the time had intended it to be so I could buy a comic book now and then. But it ended up being lunch money as far as my grandmother was concerned. And so there was no need for me to eat at home in the house because I had lunch money. What she didn't know or didn't care about was that my school did not have a cafeteria. Once a week on Friday, they would get pizza or something. But the amount of money that I was given was intended to last the entire week because of the way things were set up. So I was given, I think I was given a $5 bill, and there was just no way to get lunch with that because I couldn't leave the school, and there was no lunch program. So luckily, we had a vending machine. And so I made it through high school um, on a Coke and a bag of M&Ms, and I had to figure out how to make it last a week. I didn't do what I did today. I would drink a little portion of the Coke and then put water in it, and then drink a little portion of the Coke and put water in it, and kind of slowly dilute it so that it felt like I had something, but I didn't. And then with the M&Ms, I divided them up and would just eat certain colors on certain days, so I felt like I had something different. And that's how I made it through high school. There are other stories, but I did have friends who would share with me if they noticed something was going wrong, but sometimes I felt bad and would refuse or make excuses. So